ever wondered why life doesn't come with a set of instructions? I always thought that would be handy. You know, you're born and you come with a little booklet. And it's not just about care and feeding, like for your parents, but it's like, you know, they'd give you a copy of that when you're like 18 or 21 on how to live as an adult. I used to wonder about that back when I was in my 20s. And what's funny is it wasn't until I was probably in my mid 40s that I read this wonderful, it was actually just a handout I got when I was in graduate school called The Rules for Being Human. But it came out of a 1998 book by Cherie Scott called Life is a Game. And that was kind of the origin of this. She actually adapted a lot of these rules from ancient Sanskrit texts. And so, you know, she gave it her own spin and twist and whatever, but the concept of it came from ancient text. And I always thought that would be great to have something like that when I was younger, of course. And then I saw this, and ever since I first saw the list of this, I've always had a copy of it, you know, somewhere where I, you know, revisit it periodically. So the idea of having rules for being human. In other words, these are not necessarily religious or anything like that, but there is kind of a spiritual element to them. And I think they're very powerful tools that if you really embrace them and use them in your life, I think it will, you know, can make a huge difference. Now, Cherie Scott calls them rules, but I prefer to think of them as guidelines. If you ever watched Pirates of the Caribbean, you know that there's no code. They're really just guidelines. So I prefer to think of them as guidelines. Anyway, it's my weird humor coming out there. So there are 10, I'm going to go through 10 of them. There's been as many as 12 of these in different variations of her concept, but I'm going through the main 10 because that's the first thing that I basically learned, and I just thought they just fit perfectly. So I'm going to go through each of those. So the first one is, you will receive a body. As a human being, when you're born, you get a body. You only get one body. You don't get more than one body. And it's yours for the duration of your life. So for good or for bad, you get one body. And it's your responsibility to figure out how to maximize the potential of that body, because you're probably not going to get a perfect body. I mean, not just looks wise, but health wise and any other way. So it's your responsibility to do the best you can with the body you get. Okay, so that's the first one. Number 2 is, you will learn lessons in your life. You will learn lessons. In other words, life is a classroom. As we go through life, it's like you're in school again. I mean, you're in school perpetually. And you know how in school there were certain subjects you liked and other subjects you didn't like maybe you liked history and you didn't like math. Well, it's the same thing in regular life. You know, maybe you like some parts of your life, but you don't like other parts of your life. But they're all lessons. Even the stuff you don't like, you got to get through the class. And so life is basically full of just nonstop lessons. So number 3 is, there are no mistakes, only lessons. Now this is a really interesting one. I really like it because it basically says when you go through life, you're supposed to encounter difficulties. It's not supposed to be easy. We are challenged constantly. But we don't think of them as mistakes when you do something wrong. You think of it as a lesson. You just hopefully learned a lesson. And if you do that, then you can kind of roll through the mistakes a little easier without beating yourself up or agonizing over it or being tortured by it. It's just another lesson. And if you think of it that way, it kind of makes it a little easier to deal with some stuff. And number 4 ties in with this, with the concept of a lesson is repeated until it is learned. Okay? A lesson is repeated until it's learned. Wow. Yeah, is that not true? Because when you don't get it the first time or the second time or the third time, life kind of hits you upside the head if you keep not getting it. Now, some people, I hate to say this, never get it, which is unfortunate because they keep going through the same pattern their whole life. But once you learn a lesson, once you get what you're supposed to understand out of an experience, it will stop happening to you. Once you get it, once you can pull back, look at it objectively, you will be amazed that you will may not have to face something like that again. So I think this one is a really cool one. Number 6 is a good one. There is no better than here. And this refers to what I call the grass is always greener on the other side concept. In other words, as we go through life, we always think, oh, well, if I did this in my life, it would certainly make my life better than it is now. No, generally not. As soon as we make a there our here, we keep wanting another there. That's just human nature. We're hardwired for it. We will always be craving something else. And as soon as you're aware of that, you can kind of restrict or damp down the damage that can happen from constantly pursuing other theirs. Like you can actually have a talk with yourself and say, whoa, what are you doing? Number 7 is one that I did a short on a long time ago. It's really about the concept of projection. And the guideline says, others are merely mirrors of you. Others are merely mirrors of you, which means that when we see other people and we're judging them invariably, because people judge other people all the time, we're looking at their good qualities, their bad qualities, but we're projecting our stuff onto them. So things we like and don't like about ourselves, we tend to project onto other people. And so we end up judging them way more than we probably should, because what we're doing is we're adding our baggage onto them. And so we're not even getting an objective or clear picture of who they are and what their struggles might be, because we keep adding in our own. And that's, again, a very natural psychological concept. We do that without realizing it. But once you start realizing it, you can kind of at least minimize how much you do it, I would say. You're able to kind of pull back and not do it as much. The 8th one is what you make of your life is up to you. In other words, when we're born, and assuming we don't have physical or mental disabilities that obviously affect our ability to, be physical, able to do things, or cognitively able to do things. Otherwise, by the time we're adults, we have the tools inside of us to know how to do this. We know how to live our life. We know how to correct problems. We just, a lot of times, refuse to see it. Or even if we see it, we think it's too hard. And we're like, oh, that just sounds like so much work. It is work. Life is work. It's lessons. And you don't just get a pass because you put your head in the sand. So all the tools are within you. It's just up to you whether you choose to use them. And that's an important concept. Number 9 is kind of related to number 8. And it's that the answers lie within you. The answers all lie within you, whether you know it or not. You have the tools, you have the ability to trust yourself, to love yourself, to lead a better life. You have the ability to do that if you just own that power, own that ability. It is a really, really important concept that kind of ties up all the others. That you have the ability from day one to basically do this. And number 10, drum roll. Number 10 is you will forget all this. Everything I just talked about with you, all the guidelines I just went over, you will forget all this periodically, because the human mind always tends to go off the rails a bit. And we tend to forget the most important things that would keep us centered and focused and present. We just tend to do that. So you have to constantly remind yourself. And one way to do that is Go print out a copy of this. All you have to do is look it up online, Rules for Being Human. You can find a printout of this. Make a copy for yourself. Put it on your phone. Put a copy on your refrigerator. Put a copy in your purse or whatever. Do whatever it takes to periodically remind yourself of these guidelines, because they help and they work if you consistently get your mind in that kind of space, that you start being very present with yourself. You start noticing when, hey, I think I've been through this lesson before, and why didn't I learn it the last time? That kind of thing, where you kind of question yourself. But yeah, if you just read this once and kind of put it aside and don't ever look at it again, you will forget all this. You will forget everything I've just talked about, or everything you read if you print this out. You will be lost temporarily. So I encourage you to put this somewhere where you can refresh your memory with it, that you can revisit it from time to time. You might want to read her book, and I'll put the title of her book down in the description below. But I shared this with you today because I think they're really important guidelines for you to help you live your life. Living is not easy. We are, none of us really, unless you're actually told by a doctor that you're going to die on a certain day, which is a very hard thing, obviously, to predict. But we don't know how long we have to live. We don't know how long we have to continue to go through this thing called life. And wouldn't it be great to have some tools that make it a little bit easier? Just make it a little bit easier so we don't keep making the same mistakes over, so we don't keep projecting things onto other people, so that we realize we have the power within ourselves to work on these issues. That is a really, really great thing for us to know. So I wanted to share this with you today so that you would have some tools. And until next time, be well, be kind, keep moving forward. Take care. Bye.